Everybody, I'm Jack Campbell with Keller Williams Realty, and I'm super ecstatic today to have on set with me today Jim Torti. And the reason I'm excited to have Jim here is because he's been in and around the investment world for so long here in San Diego County, and then actually in all other states now. But he's been involved both on the business planning side of the world, consulting with businesses on how to be more profitable what they're doing, then transitioned that same business and profitability concept into commercial real estate and doing, like conversion. So they're actually physically taking buildings and taking them from one specific use into another specific use that's a higher value for consumers. So he's got just such a broad array of background in the financial and analytical end to understand financial products. And then that led to his love to real estate, which, I've enjoyed working with him in a product that he now represents, which is known as a DST. So thanks for coming in today to help us all explore a little about DST, because I would guess that the majority of the public is uneven aware of what the product is, how it gets used, how it could benefit them potentially in certain circumstances. So
absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming and being on set and for bringing your wealth of knowledge. So
thank you, Jack. I appreciate the invitation. And again, it's been a pleasure working with you. And we've had a couple of clients kind of working through the process of understanding a DST and the exchange process. But
what is a DST?
Yeah, so I think to be helpful today to kind of organize our thoughts into three areas: the product, which is the DST, the process, which is the 1031 exchange process, and then the people that are typically involved in that process. And I think that's probably a good way to talk about a fairly dense subject.
Yeah, and I understand that this financial space is regulated, right? So you have to be licensed to sell these products. It's it's serious. Who's the licensing body behind it?
FINRA.
Okay, so FINRA, other financial products, is the same licensing body, which means that you're held to a specific standard as to the product.
That's right. Disclosures, reporting, obviously the rules on communicating with investors, qualified investors and clients. So it is a very tightly regulated market. My licensure has to do with representing this alternative product, which is an alternative investment. And basically a DST is this. It's an institutional grade property investment, large investments. These could be $100 million. It's either a portfolio or an individual property. It could be a multifamily property or a commercial or self-storage.
It can be anything.
It could be anything, really. And but the difference is that it's held in a Delaware Statutory Trust. So there's a trustee.
Delaware Statutory Trust, DST.
Yeah, and I never really quite understood why they market it as a DST, because that's the legal entity that holds the property. The more interesting thing that I think as part of this market is that these are institutional grade, professionally managed properties. They have already financing in place, they're stabilized, they're managed, they're property managed, and they're basically performing against a plan. And that's probably the most important thing, and it allows an investor to come in and participate in a fractional interest. That's what the DST is. But they call the market, the DST market is really not the product. The product is the real estate, right?
Yeah.
It's a direct investment in the real estate.
So and that obviously ties back into your background and experience with a lot of commercial-based investment and consulting, now taken to the DST world, where people are buying a fractional interest in a much larger scale product
That's right.
has been in the past reserved for large entities instead of
That's correct.
the consumer at the consumer end. So
That's
now
right.
this is really, it's a way of a consumer getting in on a commercial grade product.
100%. And the beauty of that is that they don't have to worry about professional property management, the trash, the tenants, the toilets, the upgrades. They can take advantage of financing that's already in place, by the way. The reporting, the structure of the management of the property is, again, based on reporting. So the investor participates as an investor, not as an operator. And so it's a benefit of having a passive interest in a very actively managed property.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. So how are you seeing most of the money coming? Well, first off, how big is this market? I mean, it sounds like it's
I appreciate the question, and I think it's really, really important. This is, although I specialize in this niche market called DSTs and
Right.
alternative investments, it's $1 billion market. $7 billion was raised last year as of December 31, 2021, according to Mountain Dale Consulting. There are some other research companies that consult on the market, but it's a big market. There's 52 programs as of December of last year. 80 days on average. Market properties are on market for 80 days on average.
And when you say that, when they're on market, does that mean that that's the time frame for investors to enter into the vehicle, into that DST
that's correct.
product? So it's the window's not that big, really.
It's not that big, and it's been accelerating because of the popularity of the products and the availability, and then in contrast with the market, the way the market's been, that's not a long time. But from the time that the DST is available, the investment is available and then announced and approved and available to investors to invest, from the time that they close out the investment is on average has been 80 days in 2021. Cool. But of course, there's 26 active sponsors that are doing deals in this space, and at any one time, there's 52 different programs.
Okay.
Multifamily, self-storage, commercial, any kind of industrial property, real estate that you can imagine is in this market.
Yeah. So most of the money flowing into there, I imagine, is like what I'm seeing the use for, which would be money coming out of a 1031 exchange, right? Somebody who's selling a residential or commercial property and need that money to flow into something where they can keep that tax advantage of a 1031 exchange.
That's correct. Right. And that brings us to the process, because what's interesting about this market is you can do 1031 exchange, which is more prominent, but you can also invest cash. You don't have to come from an exchange. The benefit of the 1031 exchange, obviously the IRS code allows an investor to defer any capital gains, any increases in equity and value. 100% of that can roll forward into another investment product. And the beauty of that process allows for a very tightly managed timeline, which is really important because you've got 45 days to identify, and you have an option to identify multiple properties. And then you have 180 days beyond that point to close to qualify as that, to qualify for that tax deferred exchange.
So that, I mean, I can see that that's clearly it's an awesome opportunity for consumers who are looking to exit, an actively managed portfolio of properties or individual properties here in San Diego County. I mean, people can have millions of dollars tied up in a single residential piece of property that they don't have a specific use for and really don't want to deal with the complexity of management, and going in a product like this seems like it'd be a good use, which is why I wanted to have you here today, because just the introduction of the concept that there's vehicles out there to help people exit those properties, I think is extremely valuable, particularly in our market today, because I meet this week, I've met with 4 individuals, all who have properties they're wanting to liquidate, but the question is always, where does this money go? So that's thanks again for coming on with me today and sharing that knowledge. I know we just scratched the surface.
Absolutely.
And I don't doubt that there's
a lot more to talk about.
We could spend hours chit-chatting about it, and I know we have already. And I know that there's a lot more to share. So if anybody's interested in getting more information from Jim about DSTs, definitely do reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect you and make sure we get the information that you need to decide if this is a product that's a fit for you. It does require that you be an accredited investor. So I know we talked about that, and there's some rules around what an accredited investor is.
That's right.
But that being said, thank you again for coming on today.
Thank you,
and look forward to exploring this a little more with you and with clients.
Be happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to see you.